Happy game day, ladies and gentlemen. Footscray versus Collingwood in the massive clash at the G. Bulldogs marquee game. They gave up the Marvel Stadium to play at the G against the Black and White. We know going into the game, the Doggies are quite depleted, but we know that system trumps the individual talent at times. So let's do business tonight, get the job done, and make way for headway into the bye. And then we have Carlton. So take a little bit of rhythm from last week into this week, build on it is what we want to see. We want to see consistency. That dichotomy and the difference between the game against GWS compared to the game against Port, we can't be too far between those two performances. We've got to replicate that Port Adelaide intensity more than anything. I think what we are wanting more than anything from the team is the effort, the pressure, the tackling numbers, and then our game builds from there. It was interesting watching. What were your thoughts on the Hawthorn-Carlton game? I think we just saw two sides. One side who rely on contest, and to play like that for 4 quarters consistently is very hard, which is probably why we see these inconsistencies from a side like Carlton versus a side that is so clean on the rebound. Like their hands are so slick, Hawthorn. Like you put a timer on, they're gone in 10 seconds from end to end. So when I think about our side, I was just like reflecting. I was like, well, how does our side match up against a Hawthorn side like that? And how does our gameplay stack up against that blueprint? I thought to myself, we have some good sequences from halfback. We can do that, but we do it in more of a chaotic fashion. And the team they were versing yesterday don't really have that at all in Carlton. Like Carlton, they would have struggled massively to score from back half. I just want to clarify that. I mean, I maybe saw one transition for Hawthorn last night. Wow. Carlton did not score a goal from the back half. That's crazy. That is something else. A lot of their work was done off turnover and centre bounce, whereas Hawthorn kicked 5-4-34 from the back half, which is AFL average. But in a game where it's wet like that, to uphold that standard in that weather, fuck, it's saying something. And in the end, Hawthorn beat Carlton in stoppages. And Hawthorn last year, they weren't the greatest stoppage team, but as Jai Newcombe gets better, Will Day keeps growing, they get Warple back, I don't think they'll be too bad of a side in the midfield moving forward this year. They'll be right up there if they aren't already. So I asked myself, where do Collingwood stand? Like I said, we're a bit more chaotic off the halfback. Our pressure is right up there. To be fair, Carlton had 85 tackles last night. That is a high standard, but Hawthorn were able to take it a level beyond that, which is hard to fathom and comprehend. So kudos. Look, it seems like right now, the way Hawthorn are playing, you have to play the perfect game to beat Hawthorn. And they are the bar setters right now. So that's why I'm always asking myself, where does Collingwood stack up in that? What do Collingwood have that Carlton don't? I think Collingwood have this confidence in their winning mentality, ability to move the ball, a superstar talent like Nick Dacos. I think we give Hawthorn different looks. It didn't look good last season, but hopefully that was just an outlier, that performance. What we're saying, guys, Digsby says, welcome back, Coxie. How good? How good is that to see Coxie back in the side? I actually have in my thumbnail for the VFL game tomorrow. So I'm going to have to change that. I've also got Finlay McRae in there, who's also injured. So the only player in that thumbnail that is playing tomorrow is Will Hayes. So hopefully Will Hayes is being selected and is available to play, because that would be a striked out. But good to see Big Coxie back in the squad. I want to ask you guys in the comment section, go. Start a Q&A. What will Mason's role look like tonight? That's my question to you guys. Think about it. What will Mason's Cox role look like? I said Mason's Cox. What will Mason's role look like tonight against a Bulldog side with the likes of Sam Darcy and Aaron Norton and Ed Richards is in the midfield, Roy Lobb in the back line. Who's their ruckman? Tim English. So what does it look like? What are you expecting? Stefanos, afternoon. Button Ramish, my man. An hour and a half left to go for work for the week. Good way to wrap it up. Yeah, it would be even better if we get the win tonight. So, you know what? I truly do believe that the best part of the footy week and the working week is that day leading into the game, especially if it's like a Thursday or Friday. For me, it's always the build-up. Yeah, the game is great, of course, and when you win a big game, it's even better. But it's just a different feeling going into the game. After the game, when we win, is great because we get to rest on our laurels for 48 hours. That's usually the way to go about it. But generally speaking, for mine, my favorite part of the day or the part of the experience is I'd say pretty much all day. You're consuming SEN in the morning while you're working. You're talking footy with your friends or your work colleagues. It's hard to beat, don't you think? Elada Ken Fisher. Got to be wary of the wounded, says Button Ramish. We've got to be careful. That injury list at the Doggies is extensive. But like if you look at the fixture last year, we were under in the same situation, except the roles were reversed this time round. We had a pretty depleted side halfway through last year, and the games that we were performing really well in were the games where we were undermanned. So that's why we just go into this game. Yes, I'm saying it's got to be a business win, but that's not us as fans undermining the Doggies. We know they're a good side. We know they've got superstar talent in there, even without Bont, even without Chalor, even without Jamara. So got to be wary of the wounded, Ramish. You're right there. Ben Zero, good afternoon, champs. Happy game day. Happy game day to you, my man. Excited. Jim of the Jimbos says, got to build momentum now. That's what it's all about. This game is all about building momentum and confidence and consistency in a winning mentality. Right? That's all it is. That's all it comes down to. And Manny concurs. He says, tonight we'll find out if we're a consistent footy team or just the same as last year. So last year, what was our win-loss trend looking like? Let's have a look. Google afl.com.au. Like I know in the mid part of the year we actually had quite a big stretch last year where we were undefeated. I think it was 9 games, wasn't it? Let's have a look. Collingwood. All right. So we lose 1, 2, 3 in a row, and then we beat Brisbane, Hawthorn. We beat Port Adelaide. We draw with Bombers. We beat Carlton. We beat the Eagles. We beat Adelaide. We draw with Fremantle. Thanks, Matty Nichols, dog. We lose to Footscray. So I think it was 8 games or 9 games undefeated in that stretch. And then we beat Melbourne convincingly on Queen's birthday. We win 2 in a row after beating North, and then this is where it's a slippery slope from here. So we have the bye. We have the bye round. We go to Gold Coast. We always know that's trouble. We lose against them. We lose against Essendon. We lose against Geelong. We get pumped by Hawthorn. You think it's all but pretty much all but over. And then we beat Richmond Blues. And then that game against Sydney, very winnable game. We beat Brisbane in that thriller. We pump the Ds. We lose against GWS in this opening round. We beat Port. And here we are now to the present day. Hawks remind me of the 2022, 2023, but without the constant close finishes. I'd almost go as far to say, Ben, that they're probably better than that. Just purely putting it down to the skill level by foot. I think that is that is the difference between our side in 22 and 23 compared to the Hawks of 2025. We're certainly, that side that we had is certainly more experienced than the Hawthorn side. Like Bruce and Gunston hardly getting a sniff right now for the Hawks. So that does count. That does account for something, doesn't it? When it comes to chasing premiership glory in the back end of the year, and we'll see where Hawthorn find themselves. Can they keep up this momentum? Look at Sydney last year. They looked, for the first 10 games of the year, they were virtually unbeatable. And then they had some chinks in their armor. They got pumped by Port in the second or last game of the season, and they lose the grand final and get pumped in that again. So Ramish, we play a similar style. They benefit a lot more from foot skills. We are handball heavy. Yeah, that's probably the discerning difference. We're more handball happy, especially off half back, but there is a kick here and there to assist us with breaking the lines. Jimbo says, we live in a handball world now. Kicking is a last resort. Collingwood might live in a handball world now, but with Josh Dacos and Houston there, it does balance that out a little bit more. Kicking long, I think is what you're trying to say, Jimbo. Kicking long is definitely a last resort. It doesn't work. The Blues can't find a target inside 50. They just have this is one of the other problems with Carlton. They just don't have any courage, any balls to bite off that like 15, 20 meter kick inside the corridor to advance to the next line of the field. That was the biggest thing for me. And there's players demanding it in the middle, but the players in the back line aren't honoring those kicks. Lewis Young is so comfortable going long. Wiedering, you can throw him in there as well. Nick Haynes, like Mitch McGovern at times. These players are just conceding the long kick, and it's the same thing in the midfield. It's the same thing in the midfield to the forward line. There's no belief. It sort of festers like a disease. When you kick it long and have the opportunity to go short, the next player, Camporelli, young, new to the AFL system, he's seeing all his mates around him in the team kicking it long. He's like, oh, I'll do it as well. I'll settle for less. Yeah, that kick from D'Ambrosio was unbelievable, Ramish. Hawks are such a well-balanced team. The defense is probably the best. So Manny reckons Coxie, ruck forward, simple. Kev says second ruck and key forward. Can we get a bit deeper than that? Let's see. Definitely stretch their back line. I think that's an obvious one, isn't it, Ben? With Coxie stretching their back line. Just Rory Lobb. James O'Donnell as well is out. So I think they brought in Buku Kamas, who's like 6'2". He'll play in the back line, but he'll be undersized. Maybe he plays on like a Membry. Mason Cox, if he starts on the field, maybe Roy Lobb goes to him straight away, or he goes to McStay. So there's going to be mismatches. This is a game of taking advantage of the mismatches that we have available in our side. That's going to be the key, the path to victory. Abusing them. But if it's not working, abandon it and stick to what you know best. Find the best option. I'm not saying abuse the mismatch, even if it's not a optimal situation, but you definitely want to test the waters and see, well, let's find out about Buku Kamas if he happens to match up on Mason Cox or McStay. Let's put it on his head. He's a fringe player. He's played forward. He's played back. He doesn't know where he belongs at the club. Is he an AFL player? These are the players we have to not help them, but these players, we have to make them question whether they belong at this level. Overwhelm them. But obviously we have to win the contest first to get it where we need it, right? Ruck forward. All good, Steve-O. Let's go. Flag pies. Just got home. Let's go. Sash says Mason will sit as a huge beacon, smack bang in the middle of the back line of Force Dogs wide. Can see the boys triple teaming Darcy and go to work on ground balls. Yeah. The other part to the Mason Cox strategy tonight will definitely be to help us in the back line against Darcy, especially, and Norton. So I think Mason Cox is going to have a great role, a big say in tonight's game. It'll be he'll find himself in the back line. He'll find himself in the forward line. He'll find himself in the ruck against Tim English. So even with that matchup with Tim English, it's going to be a battle of Mace is going to hopefully win the majority of the hitouts. But once the ball hits the deck and the ball gets rolling, will Tim English work over Mason Cox around the grounds? That's another thing. My prediction for Mason Cox and Darcy Cameron tonight, I'm going to say between the two, they're going to have 4 intercept marks. That's what I'm thinking. Go Pies. Morning. Bobby Hill to show some swag tonight. 4 goals, Bobby. He's due, isn't he? When was the last time Bobby Hill kicked 4 goals for the Pies? Let's have a look. We know he's the goal assist magician. We know, but I want to see some snags. Let's see. All right, goals. Last time Bobby Hill kicked 4 goals. Was it Brisbane? No. He kicked 5 against North Melbourne. And before that, he kicked 3 against Brisbane, and he kicked 4 in. Last time he actually kicked 4 goals was in that 2023 grand final. The most he's kicked since then is 5 against North Melbourne, where he took mark of the year. Jimbo, Darcy spanked us last time. Wouldn't mind Coxie spending some time on him with heavy physicality. I think that's probably going to be the way. Really work Darcy with Coxie. I don't think, guys, was Coxie playing when we played Western Bulldogs last year? Let's have a look. I don't think he was. Because... yeah, so Mason Cox, the game before, remember in Perth against Fremantle, he got concussed and partially tore his ACL. So he didn't actually play against Western Bulldogs. And poor Charlie Dean was left to battle Sam Darcy and probably, and really, we might look back at Charlie Dean's run at AFL level, and you could probably argue that teams like the Bulldogs and GWS in that opening round, even Sydney, were the demise of Charlie Dean's career. Kev says, this time last year, we lost 3 games in a row and we got on a little bit of a run, but this year it feels different. I think we'll win 4 games and maybe Geelong. We could lose Freo. Geelong we could lose, and Freo we will lose. Kev, come on. Freo are still pretenders, mate, in my eyes. They're not there yet. You're saying maybe Geelong, but we will lose against Freo. Interesting. The good thing is, what I loved the most about that convincing win last week was we just bucked the trend of 2024. I was having demons in my mind. I was fighting demons. I thought, God, we've just lost against GWS again in opening round. Please don't let this be a repeat of the start of last year. I couldn't deal with it. I actually kind of feel sorry for the Carlton fan base. Is that crazy to say? Look, I don't remember the 90s, so I know a lot of you lived through the 90s and the dominance of that Carlton period. But I do feel a little bit bad because, one, they haven't won a flag since the 90s. We've won 2 since, and we've been in grand finals. Whereas they have their best side available. They can't offer anything more than what they have. Their salary is probably filled to the brim. So what they have is what they got now. This is it. At least if it doesn't work out for us over the next couple of years, at least we can say, hey, we've seen 2010, we've seen 23, we saw us battle in 2011. We had that all-time grand final thriller in 2018. Like these, while some of them are memories we don't want to remember, they'll forever live on, right? We're a part of that. We're etched in that history as fans, as the club, as the players, as the coaches. I wonder how they're feeling now about giving up their picks for Jagger Smith in lieu of really trying to poach Dan Houston. Because it seemed like in that period, Houston was set to go to Carlton. That's what it sounded like. And really, you know what compounded Carlton and really screwed them this year? Nick Newman. The fact that he did his quad, when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's huge. That's bigger than Jagger Smith right now, because Nick Newman is by far and away their best ball user off the halfback. Mitch McGovern's good by foot, but he also has other responsibilities, and that's keeping his forwards quiet. Whereas Nick Newman, it's like free reign. You got the keys to possess the ball and dispose of it. That's your first priority. Michali, wonder what Perriman's role will be tonight. Ed Richards' tag, I reckon. It's a decent shout. Where will Perriman situate himself? Where will Fly McRae deploy him tonight? Where will Fly McRae deploy the entire team? Because he always finds a way to surprise us with positions. So you might find Perriman off half back. You might even find Dan Houston in the midfield, even though we haven't really seen that in his career. You might see Josh Dacos on the wing at times. Jack Crisp in the middle. Bo McCreary pinches in. Who knows? You want to go way back to 22. Didn't Braden Maynard start on Patrick Cripps in the midfield for one centre bounce and then didn't feature again? Jamie Elliott's been floating through sparingly. It's a bit of a Russian roulette trying to guess what type of role certain players will play for the Pies on any given game day, just because Fly makes it very unpredictable. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's hard for coaches of opposition to ascertain what the best way is to go about their game plan against the Pies. That's the beauty and the versatility that we have in our side. Benny Parsons. What's up, Pies footy? Looking forward to another Collingwood win tonight. To go to start slow but build into the game. Who's your pick for the sub? This was a deep conversation yesterday. We spent quite some time on the sub last night, didn't we, lads and ladies? We ruled out. Feel like we've ruled out Sidey and Pendles for the sake of their milestone. Like, it just wouldn't make. I say it wouldn't make sense, would it? I don't know. I don't think they will do that. I think they'll both start in the field. I don't think people were saying Jeremy Howe. I don't think that will happen. He's too important to have as a sub, and he's not really the type of player you want as a sub. Lockie Sullivan got dropped. I genuinely think it's between. I think we settled for DeGoey or Jamie Elliott. I'd be very disappointed above anything if Ned Long was made to be the sub after his performance. The way he unhinges Nick Dacos, and if he can do that on a consistent basis, Nick Dacos, we know his best work is as an outside player, getting the handball receive out of the contest. Yes, he can be the hit two guy. Yes, he did that all last year. Yes, he thrived in that position. Did his efficiency take a hit? Yes, of course. When you're the go-to guy, you're going to have people, buddy, sitting on your ass. That's just the nature of it. So, but if you have to ask me, which one would you rather? I'd rather Nick Dacos on the outside. So get Ned Long to do that. Get Perryman to do that. Okay. Yeah, that Buckley era, especially 2021, Ben, reminds me of Carlton right now. That was so frustrating. I remember how frustrating it was. And then that second half of the year, I think we put DeGoey in the midfield, and he was able to become this connector between defense and forward. He would just pick up those little possessions in between the spaces of the midfield. He'd just progress the ball along and would just pick up a bunch of uncontested possessions to keep the ball moving. And then we sort of had a little period, maybe it was just that Melbourne game, where we just took the game on. And that was very pleasing. But for the majority of the year, it was slow, it was boring, it was risk averse, it was safe, it was boundaries. It was very frustrating. It's the only year where I can recall games where I closed the TV/laptop and said, I can't watch this anymore. And I don't think that's a bad thing. People might say, oh, you're a fake fan. You can't even watch the full game, stick around, like support the lads. No, you've got to, as a fan, you have to put your foot down and give the club an idea as to what's acceptable, what's the standard that we hope for as a fan base. That's important as well. It's like, what's a good analogy? Let me try and make one up on the spot. Say, I'm gonna have a crack here. Say, it's like that going to a Collingwood game where we do not believe in the game plan. It's failing. We suck. It's uninspiring. It's like hanging around your ex just for the sake of it, hoping that they will get back to you, even though you're friends. Like she dumped you. You're just friends, and you're still sticking around. Like, you just don't do that. Move on. We want something new. We need something new. Don't look back. That's your analogy for the day. Tell your kids that one. Tell your friends. Mark says Geordie should mostly play forward. Our midfield was great last week, plus the injuries in the midfield. Yeah. Geordie, if he's not the sub, I think 50-50 would be a good split. In his interview with SEN, he said he's going to work his way into the game. Take that as you, interpret that as you will. That could imply that he might be the sub. That could imply that he starts as a forward. We know he's a great forward. Like, look what he did against Adelaide last year. Look at what he's done throughout his whole career. He's a consistent player when thrown into the forward line. He's like a wrecking ball in there. He's fast. He leads into the ball well. He can take a contested mark. He's great at ground level. He can break tackles. He can find a pass. He can lower his eyes. He knows when to shoot. He knows when to pass. He can, yeah. Oh, it's so refreshing to have a clean bill of health right now, barring Tom Mitchell. I wouldn't include Myercheck. You're talking Tom Mitchell and Harvey Harrison, who probably not. They aren't in our best 23 right now. Fresh It says Mason Cox playing tonight as a scarecrow to get rid of the pigeons. Ramish, geez. Mate, I love your questions, Ramish. Ramish says, how well does Coxie need to play to keep Checkers out? So, if all things are even and all things are black and white, and it's just based on performance and there's no injuries and whatnot, I think Coxie, to consider his spot, he needs to kick 3 goals. I think anything, 3 goals, contested marks, intercept marks. There is, the question is, okay, I've got a better question, Ramish. I've got a much better question. One moment. Much better question. Let's go start a poll. Is there a world where Mason Cox stays in the team next week? That's the question. Is there a world where Mason Cox stays in the team next week? Remember, we're talking if everyone's available, if it's based on performance. Is there a world where we see Mason Cox play again next week? Collingwood should get, Jazza says, Collingwood should get Reid for West Coast. I want to see a little bit more from Reid this year before we dabble into that a little bit more. Right now, I'd rather an LDU or a Matt Rao. Mick, say it loud, brother. Don't feel sorry for Carlton. It's a good giggle, says Steve-O. Freddie, welcome, mate. Ramesh, condolences, mate, that your fiance is a Blues fan. That is very conflicting, and I question your ability to survey the dating field and ultimately select a Carlton fan as your girlfriend. That is a sin, cardinal sin in the dating world as a Collingwood fan, my friend. That is tragic. Chris Talbot, hey Anthony. Hey Chris, how you going? Mick, Carlton beat West Coast in a couple of weeks. They'll be talking flags again. Mark, they've already stated their next rebuild with Jagger. Okay, that's more Carlton talk. We'll move from that. Chris Talbot says, did Mason Cox deserve to be picked tonight? I think so. I think his form late last year has warranted his selection this season. His preseason was good. He offers a bit of a trump card for us strategically. Who else are you going to pick? Hoskin Elliott? Yeah, probably. There's Hoskin Elliott who's in the conversation, but beyond those two players for selection tonight, I don't think it would have been realistic or reasonable to consider Will Hayes or Charlie West. You'd like them to sort of work on their game and their confidence and the intensity levels and maintain a high standard at VFL level before you just give them a freebie, a free swing at AFL. Let them earn it. Let them earn it. Geelong are really good at that. To be fair, Fly's he's pretty stubborn with just handing players debuts and giving young players an opportunity for the sake of it. He wants to put the best side, the most experienced side on the field week in, week out. That is the Fly way, and I think we're learning that more and more as the weeks go by. Ramesh. Ooh, that's a good one. I think Crispy may be the sub. That's a good call. You know what? Throw him in the hat. That is a great call. Let's say Crispy. Let's say Jamie Elliott. Let's say Jordan De Goey. God, it's a raffle, isn't it, at this point? Exactly why we need Tom Mitchell, but he's done, I reckon. Yeah, he's a long way back right now, let's be honest. The Hoops crew, what's up? Your video thumbnails are winning the footy internet right now. Go Pies. Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Love your work. Let's when do we verse Geelong? Let's have a look. When do we verse Geelong? Let's collab. I'll reach out to you guys on Instagram and we can talk about that. But I appreciate it. Actually, the credit should go to, if you're still here, Hoops crew. If you want to know, so a lot of the thumbnails that I have right now are created by Luke Barden on Instagram. So let me see. You know what? I'll forward you Luke's Instagram and his quality. He understands. He actually does the thumbnails for Blue Abroad. He does them for Saints TV. He does them for me. He does some for Swoop Luke as well. And if you just give him the idea, he's very creative and he'll give you what you want. So appreciate your support, man. Yeah, love of the game. If Mason Cox kicks the bag, does my check come straight in? I mean, that's the question. That's the question. Timo, Nelso, g'day legend. I've got a great feeling for tonight. I do too. I love the build up to these games, guys. I can't lie. Doesn't matter, win, lose, or draw every week. Going into the next game, the day of that game, it's just a special feeling. You know the saying, have you ever had a bad Friday? I would change it and ask, have you ever had a bad game day? But the caveat there is it's more specifically, have you ever had a bad 12 hours leading into the game day? What happens after is entirely contingent on the outcome of the game, of course. Scotty Pendlebury to turn back the clock tonight, says Steve-O. When was you know what? What about a cheeky same game multi? If Scott Pendlebury was to start, if we're talking throwing it back, when was the last time Scott Pendlebury picked up 30 disposals? Let's find out. While you guys while I'm looking that up, Why don't you guys let me know if you know when the last time he collected 30 disposals in a game was? All right, I know which game it was. I know what year it's from. I know who it was against. Tell me in the chat, when was the last time Scott Pendlebury had 30 disposals? Let's look at this. Let's have a look at this poll about Mason Cox as well. Why don't we? Let's see. So the question was, is there a world where Mason Cox stays in the team next week? 68% of you say yes. 32% say no. Interesting. Okay. Anyhow, 30 disposals was the last time. 30 disposals was last time. Sorry, guys, I'm daydreaming. The last time Scott Pendlebury had 30 disposals in a game was against Adelaide mid-season last year. And funnily enough, we've already mentioned that game where Jordan De Goey had 26 and 2. And I think that was his last game before he got injured again. So, yeah, Pendles he got 30 touches once last year. Nelso says, long-term view, don't wish injury. Wouldn't mind a key back in mid-season draft, but someone needs to go on. Yeah, Nelso, look, the only person right now that could be admitted to the long-term injury list, the obvious one is Ash Johnson. I think they're probably just waiting to see how he heals from the initial phase of the post-surgery. So I think I'd probably say there's no rush, right? I reckon we won't need to make a decision on the long-term injury list as to whether Ash Johnson will find himself there or not until very close to the mid-season draft, really. Once we get there, we can make a decision. Is how far off is Ash Johnson? That's probably the best way to go about it, right? With these ankles and ligaments and fractures, there's so many variables when it comes to expected return to play. Why would you make a decision now on that when you can wait until whenever the decision needs to be made leading into the mid-season draft? I'm looking at the contracts, out of contract players in the AFL in the next couple of years. There's not a lot of options when it comes to key backs. There are not a lot of options, unfortunately. So if we can pluck one out of the VFL, oh God, that would be a godsend. That would be a godsend. Malcolm Blight from Richmond. Jacob Blight from Richmond, when he played against Carlton, was very impressive, and he was from the Waffle in the mid-season draft last year. So if we can find, look, I know he's played a couple of games last year, but his breakout game before he got subbed was against Carlton. I think if we can find a player like him, wow, that would help us go a long way in the future. Fresh Hit says Cox is just a short-term replacement at the moment, not guaranteed games anymore. He's a short-term replacement at the moment. He's a short-term replacement for Brody Myercheck. Are you implying? Is that what you're implying? If so, the question still stands. If Cox has a belter of a game, if he kicks 3 or 4, or kicks 2, dominates in Iraq, takes marks, has a presence, he's clean with his contest in the air, takes marks, first grab, doesn't double grab the ball. If he gives you pressure at ground level, I know that's a dream. But if he's competent, can you keep someone out of the side? Can you drop a Tim Membry? Can you keep out a Brody Myercheck? I know that is ludicrous to think, but how do you drop someone like Mason Cox if he has a great game tonight? That would be so stiff. And you're flirting with momentum. If Mason Cox impresses and his input is conducive to the Pies having a great game holistically, how do you drop someone like that? Digsby thinks Pendles will surprise a few tonight. Yeah, he needs to be dominant in some facets, says Ramish regarding Mason Cox. Let's see. Love of the Game says, what is more important, giving game time to Ned Long in the middle so he can develop, or playing our 900K Perriman investment in the middle? GWS had a lot of success after they moved him out of the mid. Yeah, I actually don't think we're married to the idea of Perriman playing in the midfield. We already saw against Port. He already played at halfback. He already played on the wing. Against GWS, he had 50% midfield time. Against Port, he had 40% midfield time. So I don't think we're certainly not married to that idea. There's going to be that variety and different looks depending on what matchups we're looking for in the midfield. So, yeah, I get your point. Obviously, if Ned Long keeps playing the way he does, it's a small sample size of one game. But even when he came on as a sub in the preseason, and even when he came on as a sub in games last year, he just knows how to leave his mark in the game in different ways. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most with regards to Ned Long's progression. Ken says we need Richards. We need to run. We need to. You said this is what you said. We need to Richards run tonight. Who picks him up? Are you saying we need a run with for Richards? Who picks him up? I would say Ned Long / Perriman. That's the obvious one. DeGoey. Not that maybe they just shake hands and they say see you later. Who knows? Manny says, if we have a decent margin at 3/4 time, Geordie needs to be sub. Can't afford to stress him out at this stage. That's probably the most logistical sub to make. Or do the teams, do the high performance side of things say no at 3/4 time? We're going to keep DeGoey on. We need to get more kilometers and minutes under his legs to ensure that he's hitting the quota. That is the running requirements and demands at AFL level. So I don't think that's a no-brainer, but it's certainly an option, Manny. Done, Hoops Crew. Definitely up for a collab. All right, sweet. I'll message you on Instagram. Yeah, righto, says Chris. Peter G, big game tonight. We need to make sure we're switched on from the get-go because the Dogs will be. We don't want Darcy kicking 2 or 3 in the first quarter and getting his confidence up. Good. Don't let Darcy get off the leash early. Darcy the dog. After Maggie's, we need to stop the Libba to Richard's feed. Good point. So in that case, Peter, with that logic, you'd probably say the best matchups are Perriman to Richards and Ned Long to Libba. And if that doesn't work out, switch it out for the centre bounce. Rick says McStay to Monster the Bulldogs tonight. Huge. Yeah, McStay was unbelievable. If still Sidebottom wasn't best on ground, then I think McStay would have been the next for sure. He had like 21 touches. It was like the third or fourth most amount. It was the second most amount of disposals he's had in his career. Last time he did that was in an elimination final against Richmond in 2021. Manny says, stop gambling, bro. Didn't you make a video about this? I did, but I didn't say don't gamble. I said just be smart. Don't be in it to call yourself a millionaire. Yeah, chuck a cheeky 5, 10, 15 bucks. It's harmless. It's just like with anything in life. With anything, it's everything in moderation. I do think the advertisements in the AFL world regarding gambling is certainly excessive. That's for sure. I'm giving you butterflies, Ken, you said. I was fine until now. I was fine until your show started. Now you've given me butterflies. Funny man. Chris Cassette says the goey to start in the middle. You'd love to see that. You'd love to see the 2023 centre bounce. Nakos, the GOAT, Pendlebury. You'd love to see that just to throw it back. Freddie says, what's the caterpillar doing under your nose? You've lost the plot. DeGoey 2+ goal. It depends what type of DeGoey they want to put on the field. They want to put him in the midfield or in the forward line. Freddie Jong, you're a class act, mate. You're a clown. I love it. Freddie's been here for a long time, guys. Freddie's been here since way back last year. He says the same comment every stream. Once you go, what does he say? Once you go Asian, you can never go back to Caucasian. So, hey, whatever floats, man. Tim Nelson says, didn't we have one training with us last year? Tall, skinny fella in the VFL. Are you talking about Glover, who's the skipper of the VFL, Nelson? Oh, Jimbo, that is a good one again. Bo McCreary could be the sub, swapping with Geordie in the second half. Can see that happening as well. That is a great one. Bo his pressure's been great. Other than that, he's been average. So you could make an argument for Bo McCreary to be the sub and just come on in the second half and just be an absolute bull. Maybe get him into the midfield in the second half and just cause havoc. That's a great call. Peter G says, I would be happy to see De Goey have 15 to 10 and kick 2. That would be a positive return. I reckon so. Madison Talarico says, when does Cox score 3 low? Yeah, he's look, last in 2023 as a genuine ruckman for the most part, he averaged a goal a game. So depending on how much forward he plays, he's all right for 2. He's all right for 2. Just depends how they want to play him. I guess my point, Madison, my point there was, the question was, you may have missed it. It was, what's it going to take? Like, is there a world where Mason Cox plays in the side next week? And I said, if he has an unbelievable game, whether it's ruck presence, aerial presence, he kicks 3 or 4, how can you drop him? That was more the point. Billy O'Connor, how you going, mate? Yeah, it'd be very stiff if old mate Ned Long is the sub. I think he's going to be critical to unleashing the man Nick Dacos to get the outside ball. I think Ned Long, it's his time to get an opportunity. He's earned it. Get over it, says Chris. Yeah, if he has an impressive game in a ruck, kicks 3 or 4, he can't be dropped. And with Tim English in the side, like Nelson said, you need Cox to give DC a chop out. We'll probably see McStay as a genuine forward as well. Get a good look into that as well. Ramesh says Perriman might end up being a bit like Howe. We promised him a position that didn't necessarily suit him as much. I think Perriman is a perpetual midfield defender. Good player to have, in my opinion. Yeah, because I think, Howie came over as, I'm a forward, I'm this, I'm that. But now he's come back and he's since he's come to Collingwood, he's been probably our most consistent defender in the last, how long has he been here for? 8 years? So it could definitely trend that way for someone like Perriman. Nick Dacos to kick 2 goals tonight, says Chris. Free hit says, I think Cox will be playing mostly when others are getting managed or are injured. Yeah, look, yes, the other players that aren't available or are being rested are more versatile than Cox. But then in saying that, I think Cox offers a different skill set. Ruck, forward, can roll back, intercept. So he still fits that blueprint that Fly wants. And it seems like we're going to see a trend of Fly resting players a lot. So even if Cox doesn't make it to next week, I'm sure we'll see him more again this year. Collingwood fan says, give me one good reason why we shouldn't put Mason Cox on Sam Darcy. Sam Darcy's far too explosive and athletic for Mason Cox inside 50. He will kill him on the lead. He'll kill him at ground level. That is the genuine 1-on-1 matchup for the entirety of the game, having Cox on Darcy. Nah. Mason Cox is best positioned as a help defender, a loose defender, a rolling defender. Stephen Hanby says McCreary needs to start as a sub. His speed and tackling would be great late in the game. Look, he's someone when he's been out of favor, he comes on as a sub and does a really good job. He's been a sub before. I think, between McCreary, Crisp, maybe Elliott, Jordan De Goey further down the line. These are the players that could be considered as a sub tonight. So the coach's vote issue is interesting. Fly gave Nick Dacos 5 last week. Did he though? Let's have a look. Let's have a look at this this conversation about coaches' votes. Collingwood versus Port. So Ken Hinkley gave Steel side bottom 5. Fly gave Steel 2. And then he also gave some to McStay and Membry. And Houston was there as well. I don't do the maths in the coaches' votes, but obviously, yeah, Nick Dacos has 5 coaches' votes from that game. Look, 26 disposals at 80% disposal efficiency, 9 inside 50s, a goal. It's still a pretty good game. It was almost a faultless game from Nick. 8 score involvements, 2 goal assists. I don't think there's anything sinister. There's no malice or like manipulation in the coaches' votes from Fly there. I think that's reasonable. I don't think it's got anything to do with helping Nick Dacos win another coaches' vote award or to help his contract or give him the confidence. I don't think it's anything like that. Jack Crisp is due for a big game, says Steve-O. Huge. TP says big game for Emblebury tonight. Love it. Let's go, Tomo. Hello to Andreas. I'm already in the city and there are Pies fans everywhere getting a feed. We're going to outnumber them tonight. Always. Huge. Huge. Oh, can't wait. Can't wait. What is it? 4:55. What are you guys doing for the game? Are you watching it at home? Do you go to the pub? Are you going to be at the G? I'll be leaving for the game in about half an hour or so. Half an hour or so. Let's fix that. To watch this man and this man. So keen. Can't wait. Bobby will kick plenty. Just crumbing around Cox has dropped marks. Yeah. Look, we sort of pinned Bobby Hill as somebody who could kick a few tonight. And we're hoping he kicks a few. Bobby isn't like, yes, he's electric. Yes, he has a lot of shots on goals, but I just don't think he's that high goal scoring small forward, which I think will in the end stop him from being an all-Australian small forward. He's what we value the most out of Bobby Hill right now, I think, is his ability to bring players around him into the game. That's his best asset right now. And his ability to step players and be a part of the build-up. That's what it is. Yeah. Ramesh says, I'm an anxious watcher. I like to sit in the fresco, might cook a barbie beforehand. I like watching by myself. I sound like a 32 going on 60. You know what? I've been watching a lot of footy lately by myself. Usually I watch it with mates or I go to my mum and dad's place. But last night, I was just home by myself, just enjoying the game by myself. It's something I'm sort of learning to get used to. Not being dependent on. Look, obviously, social life is important. I'm not a bloody loner, for goodness sake. But I'm just saying it's nice to be comfortable by yourself and watching the game and enjoying it. Pies by 35, says Lance Ward. Yeah, Peter G says last year, Bobby gave off a lot of goals he could have kicked, and Bobby also tried to pass the ball to a lot of players last year when he should have had a shot on goal instead, trying to bring players into the game. But sometimes you got to look after yourself. And I dare say, guys, this is Bobby Hill's contract year where he's put his contract talks on hold. So you'd think he's going to be a little bit more selfish in that regard. He might not admit it. The club might not say that, but he's definitely probably had a thought in his mind where he's thinking, I want to put more pressure on that scoreboard as a small forward, because that bolsters my conversation and my leverage in any contract negotiations with Collingwood or West Coast / Fremantle. That's it. What else have we got? Freddie's gone to the footy. Good man. Peter G at the G. Peter G at the MCG. Stefanos, in regards to the coaches' votes conversation, says sacrificing a match winners game is a great tactical strategy that not many teams would have. It does justify 5 votes from the coaches. Yeah, and that's a really intricate way to look at it, Stefanos. With Fly, the way he considers who's the best player, there's many things that goes to it besides the stats. And what Nick Dacos did, something that you don't account for is his running patterns up and down the field, how it takes focus away from other players in the team. Like, those are things that you don't necessarily see on a stat sheet that Fly maybe noticed more than anyone and would have helped Nick Dacos get his 5 coaches' votes. Andrea says, I still think Nick's not 100%. I will kindly disagree, man. Watching him at the game last week, you know what was funny? He was running from contest to contest and then running a little bit more than that just to prove to people that he is fit. And all it was last week was just cramps. The way he ran out the game was unbelievable. There was a moment late in the last quarter where someone had a free kick, had a shot in the goal square for the Pies, and you saw Nick Dacos sprinting to the goal square just to say, "Hey, I'm here," even though I didn't need to run. It's just maybe ego in a good way. He just kept running towards the goal square, even though we were going to kick a goal. He just did it just to show, hey, it's the 4th quarter, and I'm still running more than anyone out there. Let's have a look. Did Nakos? How many? I wonder if he was in the top 5 for kilometers ran on the weekend. I mean, his time on ground will have a significant say in that. Let's have a look. Port teams. Let's go tracker, wasn't it? Kilometers. So last week, Lipinski, and he was absolutely everywhere. 15.6. Sullivan, 15.1. Quaynor was another obvious one. His repeat sprint efforts were unbelievable. Jack Crisp and Sidebottom being the wingers. Okay. Quaynor, right up my point with regards to repeat efforts. Quaynor was right up there. He had the most amount of sprints. 31 sprint efforts for Quaynor last week. The next person behind him was Joe Richards at 30. And then the next one after that was 22 in Sam Powell-Pepper. So quite a difference. Ned Long had the highest average speed. Better than Lipinski, better than Wines, better than Sidebottom, better than Pendlebury, who came on as a sub. Isaac Quaynor ran the most distance at high speed as well at 3.2 kilometers, which is incredible. There you go. Not a whole lot. I was hoping to see some Nick Dacos running stats there, but not quite. His running was unreal, says Andreas, but I don't know, man. He was blowing hard. I reckon he's at 95%. I reckon by Anzac Day, he'll be at absolute peak. I think, look, to be fair, man, I think most players going into the season won't be at 100% yet because they're still getting used to the rigors of the start of an AFL season that is being started earlier and earlier, and which means naturally you're playing in hotter weather. Lance Ward says, watching the full game live here in Thailand, face orange TV shape. I don't know what that means, but yeah, so watching in Thailand, that's awesome. Huge. We had someone last year in the chat, Theone, watched most of the games in Japan. Houston running goal from 50 for the first goal of the game. Would love to see that. Arlo says, go Pies. Enjoy the night, mate. You too. Appreciate it. Tomo taking his mate to his first ever AFL game, and he's a dog supporter. It's a great way to induct him to the MCG, the Coliseum, to see Collingwood hopefully slaughter the Dogs, hopefully. That's another good point, Nelso. And this is I'll finish on this note, Nelso. Nelso says, doesn't matter how far you run, it's also if it's more important that you know where to run and when to run and timing and not running for the sake of it. I think Nick Dacos does that very well. In soccer, that's a big thing. Playing at the highest level, the best players, they can play till 40, beyond 40, because they don't kill themselves, because they don't rely on their physical ability. Think about like Pendlebury. The reason why he's able to play up until the age of 37 is because he's never depended on his athletic ability. He's depended on his awareness, his position, his position in the ground, his vision. That's why you won't see players like you won't see an explosive, powerful player play beyond the age of 35 unless there's some genetic freak and they just maintain their levels of athleticism they had through the 20s through to their 30s. Someone like LeBron James still can dunk the ball at 40. Like, give me a break. Don't swear. That S word is filthy. I played it all my life, Nelson. Well, I played soccer until I was 19, and then I played footy for a couple of years. I played footy for a couple of years after that as well, after a little break. So it was a big part of my life. Soccer is quite I don't know what you guys think, but I will tell you, soccer is a very strategic game. It's very intellectual, far more intellectual, with all due respect. As much as I love the game of AFL, AFL was very much an effort game, a see ball, get ball, kick ball, run to the ball type of game. Soccer is very deep strategically. Then the technical ceiling is so high, so high. It's much higher than what it is compared to to Aussie rules. I'm sorry to say that, but that's just what it is. And I'm not like some soccer reject. I'm not some soccer reject. I've played at a really high level, so I know I see both sides to it. I understand both sides to it. All right. Anyways, I've got to get ready. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you hopefully in the post-game show for a win. And thank you for joining us. Go Pies.